what is this? Is your year's supply? This is what you grew?
This is what I grew in the yard, and I'm embarking on another 3 plants right now.
While producing Disorganized Crime, I stayed with various people in Northern California. And I recorded this while staying with Bob and Joanna Banana, friends of my parents and parents of one of my best friends. As Joanna Banana made tea, Bob giddily showed me the first pot he's ever grown and harvested, uncapping glass jars of the fluffy herb for me to admire, and trotting us into the garden for a peek at his new baby plants.
Well, this is awesome. What's your favorite flavor?
Well, the red dots, the forbidden fruit. I mean, I smoked that the most because the other ones I'm not sure if it's any good. In fact, today I probably should try this blueberry muffin and see if this is stony stuff or not.
Now, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act in California was passed in 2016, allowing every adult to grow up to 6 plants.
So let me describe what I'm seeing right now. Bob, my best friend's dad, just pulled out a bong. By the way, he's a 70-year-old, first-generation Chinese-American landscape architect. He just pulled out a bong. Well, he didn't even, pull it out. It was just on the table. There he goes. He's just lit up the bong. I haven't seen a 70-year-old smoking out of a bong ever.
Bob and Joanna Banana were never in the illegal pot smuggling world like my dad, but they both had interesting potributions to share. Side note, I'm a hobby neologist, one who makes up words like potribution, definition, a marijuana-related contribution like this podcast or a CBD gummy. Anyway, back to the bananas. As Bob proudly tended his garden bounty, Joanna Banana told me a fascinating story of an ill-fated trip to Puerto Vallarta in her youth.
This is not an inspiring space for me.
Lead the way.
All right, let's go out here.
Lead the way.
Maybe we'll hear some birds singing.
Cool.
Now, we'll get to that story in just a second. I'm Rainbow Valentine, and this is Disorganized Crime, Smuggler's Daughter.
It's a bubble. It's a bubble.
Rolling a doobie, young, free, and groovy, making it up as we roll along. Rolling along, far out country road, feeling great in the Golden Gate, dodging the law up in New York State, making it up as we roll along.
Now, this story takes place in 1970, when Joanna had recently moved from the East Coast to San Francisco, and her boyfriend was a guy named Jeffrey.
Well, we are in the Haight, living across the street from the Hells Angels. You know, we were hippies, but to go to work to get a job, you had to pass as straight. So I had my hair, up under a wig. I bought a wig, a blonde wig at Macy's.
Oh my God.
And I got this job at the Holiday Inn. But anyway, Jeffrey and I saved our money because we wanted to get out of town and go to Mexico. Jeffrey buys a surplus U.S. Post Office white carry-all van with windows all around and the engine in the front. Perfect vehicle. I think we paid $500 for it. And I sew curtains to go on all the windows, and we put a bed in there, and we have all our cooking utensils and our money, a couple $1,000, and we're leaving. And we hit the road and we drive south.
So Joanna and Jeffrey save their money and embark on what today's social media calls #van life. Mexico has always been a popular destination for hippies. It's cheap, it's warm, it's beautiful, it's easy to get to, and anything goes in Mexico, for the most part.
And we are warned as we go into Mexico by other itinerant hippies to watch out for the federales, because they are picking off hippies for drug charges because they feel that President Nixon has announced the war on drugs. And so rather than having to worry about Americans being arrested and molested and having their vehicles impounded, they know the U.S. government is saying, green light, go ahead, bust these people for drugs. So we do not have a speck of marijuana in our truck. We are totally clean. We are on vacation.
After a month of van life, they arrive in Puerto Vallarta. Puerto Vallarta, also known as PV, a tropical beach haven on the west coast, is a popular tourism hotspot. Now, several factors in the 60s and 70s transformed PV from a village to a destination for travelers and expats. The most interesting factor being that John Huston's 1964 film Night of the Iguana, starring Elizabeth Taylor's soon-to-be husband Richard Burton, was filmed nearby, and Elizabeth's on-set presence garnered abundant American publicity, putting Puerto Vallarta on the map for U.S. tourists.
I called my parents to talk about Puerto Vallarta. I wanted to hear about their experiences. We'd been a few times as a family, the most significant being the time I was bit by a scorpion on the hippie peninsula of Yalapa.
So after Night of the Iguana came out, which was filmed at Mesmaloya Beach, all the hippies would go down and hang out there.
No, only the semi-cool ones, there was the pecking order of hippies.
Yeah, the Haight-Ashbury was the low end of the scene. The high end of the scene was the rockers and the smugglers and
their entourages
and their people
and the pranksters and the committee, all the entertainers,
right. So that
the jugglers and the clowns.
Back to Joanna Banana and her unfortunate Mexican adventure.
We get to Puerto Vallarta. We drive into town, and it's a beautiful oceanfront, little kind of paved road. It's a completely quiet street because it's siesta time. Everything is closed and shut. And we look, and we come to a corner, and there is an open gate into a beautiful garden, which is a restaurant. And we look in, it's open, and we see 5 or 6 men sitting together, Americans, drinking beer. We go in and we join them, and we're having a lovely time. We order some food. All of a sudden, out of this quiet, we hear this shrieking of brakes, and a Jeep pulls to a stop in front of the gate that we had entered. Into the restaurant comes police. 2 policemen. And they say in Spanish, who owns that white truck around 2 blocks from here? And we Jeffrey and I look at each other and we're like, we do? And they're like, okay, come with us.
So she and Jeffrey are following the federales to their van.
And so we're standing there, and they said, okay, unload it. So we're like, okay, so not me, though, only Jeffrey. They only address everything to Jeffrey. Unload it. Take everything out. And so we knew we had no drugs, nothing. So we're unloading, Jeffrey's unloading, and the police keep telling him to go faster, hurry up. And each time he passes one of them to put something down, the guy knocks on his shoulder, gives him a shove. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And I'm standing going, this is not going to go well. And Jeffrey had quite a temper when roused. And each time they shoved his shoulder, I was like, this is not going to... Well, sure enough, the 3rd time the guy shoves him, Jeffrey hauls back and punches the policeman in the face. They pick him up bodily, throw him in the back of the Jeep, and drive away. And I'm standing in the middle of the beautiful bougainvillea-lined alley with all my belongings in the street going, what the fuck just happened? So I lock up the car. I walk back the 2 blocks. Our new friends are still drinking their beers. And they're like, what happened? What happened? Where is he? What happened? So I was like, recounted what happened, and they start shaking their heads. He is in big shit trouble. You cannot punch a policeman in Mexico. This is, worse than a drug bust. So they said, you have to call Guadalajara to the consulate and let them know that he's been arrested and, see if they can do something to get him out.
Joanna rushes to find a telephone. It's 1970, and there are only 2 telephones in the whole town, at City Hall and the travel agency.
And I talked to the travel agent, they got the consulate on the phone, I talked to the officer there, I recounted what had happened, and he was like, this is really bad. This is 20 years in the penal in Guadalajara. He is... you cannot let him get convicted of this because he will die in the penal because Americans die there. They commit suicide. He will not last there.
So Joanna has no idea how long Jeffrey will be in jail for. And if he's convicted, a likely outcome is his early death. There's no higher stakes. I'm Rainbow Valentine. This is Disorganized Crime. We'll be right back. Okay, backing up, here's a brief summary of cannabis history and law in Mexico. So cannabis in the form of hemp was brought to Mexico by the Spanish in the 16th century and used to produce rope and textiles. By 1898, cannabis use was widespread in Mexico and used for recreation and as a pain remedy. Now, eventually, Mexican elites devoted to Catholicism began to associate cannabis with the lower-class peasants and criminals. And in 1920, Mexico banned the production, sale, and recreational use of cannabis. 7 years later, they banned the export of cannabis. Trivia tidbit. In the late 1970s, the U.S. government sponsored a program spraying paraquat, an herbicide toxic to humans and animals, on cannabis fields in Mexico. Pot poisoned with paraquat began to show up in U.S. markets shortly after. Good times. Now, to clarify, Mexico, run by upper-class Catholics, disliked anyone who questioned the church, which certainly includes hippies who tend to smoke pot and philosophize. And in 1970, pot was totally illegal. In 2009, Mexico decriminalized small amounts of cannabis, and in 2017, medical use of cannabis became legal. In 2018, the Mexican Supreme Court mandated that cannabis become legal within 90 days of that ruling. And today, Mexico's recent cannabis legalization is limited, mostly because the Catholic Church is totally against medical and recreational pot. That's just my opinion. So Joanna goes to the jail, worried about what she might see.
So we get let in, and what do we see? Sure enough, there's Jeffrey, looking mollified and a little pale. And he said, I found out what happened. So we sit down, and he tells me that there are 2 other Americans in the jail. He points the other guy. One is a tall, blonde surfer guy. And he is laughing and having a great time with some friends, joking. Another is a American who didn't pay his hotel bill for like 6 months, and he is loco, because he's a little out of it. So the 3 Americans, why did they come and make us unload the truck? Well, American number 1, the surfer,